Good morning. Thank you all for coming out today on a Saturday morning. We really appreciate this great showing of folks. Welcome to the City of St. Louis Park. I should actually let my colleague Allie say that because my name is Chris Wilson and I actually work in Human Resources for the City of Bloomington. We've got several folks here from both the City of St. Louis Park and the City of Bloomington. We're all going to try to give you an idea of this new program that we are running this morning. And we'll have lots of time to ask questions and lots of folks in the room with different experiences and knowledge that can share with you. We are taping this morning's program, so they're making me stand behind this podium and speak into the microphone, which isn't my usual preference, but hopefully it means everybody can hear me in the back at least. As you can see up on the board, and is hopefully what you intended when you came this morning, what we want to share with you is information about a new law enforcement trainee program. And it, at this stage, is a joint effort of the cities of Bloomington and St. Louis Park and their police departments. It is our goal and our expectation that as we move into early 2017, additional city police departments and possibly county sheriff's departments will be joining us in this effort. So we're taking the lead, trying to get some early interest and excitement going over this program, but we really think it's going to become bigger than just our two organizations. It is a new initiative for us. Neither Bloomington nor St. Louis Park have done something like this before, but it's not entirely a new concept. We actually have to give credit to the Minnesota State Patrol, who has been running a program like this for several years now. But it is new to us, and so bear with us. We don't have necessarily all of the details worked out yet, but we do think we have enough to give you a good idea of what the program is about and help you make an informed decision about whether or not you think this might be something for you. So our kind of agenda or our schedule of events this morning is going to have really three parts. As soon as I'm done, you're going to hear from some police officers and really hear about the job of law enforcement and working as a police officer. Then Allie and I are going to cover some of the boring HR stuff, but we are going to talk about what you might expect for wages and benefits and working schedule and conditions should you choose a career in law enforcement. And then when we're done with that, the third component is going to be presented by someone from Minnesota State colleges and universities. And he's going to give you an idea of what the training component of this class looks like. So when we get done, there'll be plenty of time. We'll take group questions. We'll all hang around for individual questions and try to give you as much information as we can. So we're in our offices, in our departments, we're talking about this as a non-traditional way to recruit police officers. Most cities, especially cities the size of St. Louis Park and Bloomington, we hire police officers every year. We have some openings and we are, at least doing an annual hiring process. But we're trying to do this one differently. This is what our normal process looks like, except for it's cutting off on the side, so I apologize for that. But generally, someone in the state of Minnesota who's interested in a career in law enforcement is going to start off by going to college or technical school and getting at least a 2-year degree. Some do choose to get 4-year degrees. But you do have to have that degree in the state of Minnesota in order to be eligible to be a police officer. Once they're done with their degree, or maybe in the last semester of getting their degree, you then go to something called skills. And there's a handful of providers of skills training in Minnesota. It's a 10 to 12 week course, I believe, and really gives you some of the hands-on aspects of being a police officer. Once you're done with skills, then you sit for a statewide exam called the POST exam. POST stands for Peace Officer Standards and Training. It's a state board that sets what the standards are for being a police officer in the state of Minnesota. And we can't generally look at hiring somebody until they've taken and passed that POST licensing exam. People do that. Once they get their letter that says they passed the exam, that's kind of your ticket into hunting for a job. So most candidates would start their job search at that point and hopefully find a department that hires them. What we're trying to do with this Suburban Police Trainee Program is reorder that process and possibly remove some barriers for folks that maybe started off and made an initial career decision after high school or something that wasn't law enforcement, but maybe now are interested in a career in law enforcement. It does still, one of our minimums is you do have to have a 2 or a 4-year degree to enter this program, but they can be degrees in any subject. So say you went to school for accounting or education or business or any subject matter. You do have to have a 2 or 4-year degree, but that's the main requirement. And we're going to hire people at that point, and we're hiring them as a police trainee. And then we are going to pick up and support you through the remaining steps to take that post-exam and start a career in law enforcement. So once hired at this much earlier stage of the process, you become an employee of our agency. You are paid a full-time wage. You earn a pension, medical and dental benefits, all of the things that go along with being an employee of either Bloomington or St. Louis Park or any of our other future partners. Once you're hired as a trainee, your job for the first 16 weeks approximately is going to be to go to school full-time. We are going to pick up the tuition for that school. We're going to pay for your books for that school, and we're going to pay you for 40 hours a week to be in class and participate in class. Your only expenses at that, we're even going to equip you. You're going to have a modified uniform as well as any of the gear and belt that you will need to go through the training program. Your expenses at that point are really only your transportation to and from the training and your time studying outside of going to school is on your own time. So that training program is going to put you through the skills component, and it's also going to give you the classroom and academic training that you may have missed out on by going to college but majoring in something other than law enforcement or criminal justice. So it's kind of a skills plus program that will get you to the point where you are eligible to sit for the post-exam. Once you hire the post-exam, instead of going into a job search, you are ready for a promotion to be a police officer. So that's what we are trying to accomplish with this program. And to give you a little more idea of what it would be like to be hired as a police officer, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Jeff Potts, who is our police chief in the city of Bloomington, and he's going to share some more information about the career field with you. Whoops. Yep.
Cue the video.
Video first.
Well, good morning. Wow, not even a single good morning, huh? Is this a group of future police officers? So if I say good morning, you go back, good morning. So let's try it again. Good morning. Good morning. That's good. I thought I was actually at a law enforcement training when I came in, and there was nobody sitting in the front row. That is so law enforcement that but maybe it's in every classroom. Everybody kind of likes to avoid the front row. Well, as Chris said, I'm the police chief in Bloomington, and you're going to get to hear just a little bit from me, but we also brought some police officers from Bloomington and St. Louis Park with us here today. So if you're really interested in a career in law enforcement, there are several people here in the room that you can talk to and get a little feel for what it is like to be a police officer. To help start that, though, we created a video last year. We kind of call it a branding video or recruitment video. It's all shot in Bloomington, so St. Louis Park is very similar, although this video is just reflective of people and citizens in the city of Bloomington. We thought that'd be a good way to kind of show you what our organization's about, and then afterwards I'll talk a little bit more about why we're doing this program that we're talking about doing here today. So let's play the video.
The Bloomington Police Department is filled with skilled, compassionate professionals. We have more than a 60-year history of protecting, serving, and partnering with our community. And it's that history that inspires our relentless pursuit of excellence.
We have about 192,000 calls per year that we handle, both police and fire. We take medical calls too. We have 14 full-time dispatchers.
I don't think we should take candy from strangers.
What are you talking?
No fraternizing with the police.
When we hire new officers, we look for candidates who have compassion for people. We can teach them the skills and the professionalism, but compassion is a trait that we seek when we hire them.
When we respond to calls, we're often dealing with people who are having the worst day of their lives. We realize how important it is to show compassion and to help them out in their time of need.
One of the most important things I bring to the job of police officer every day are my people skills. Whether it be a tense crisis situation or just a day-to-day traffic stop, I want to be able to communicate effectively with them so we can come to a common understanding and solution.
Bloomington rock!
Operating an emergency vehicle can be dangerous. We provide our officers with classroom and hands-on training.
I came to the city of Bloomington for its reputation for great training and advancement opportunities.
The demands of law enforcement today require officers to be in good physical condition, and we train them with the skills to defend themselves and others.
It's a very professional department. It's a great place to be.
I left another police department to come to the Bloomington Police Department for the opportunity, the training, and the challenge of going to a place I wasn't familiar with.
We're at the band shell at Bloomingdale Lake Park, and there can be times when we'll have lots of thieves coming into this parking lot, busting out windows and taking purses and bags and things of valuables from these cars. Here we've got a real overt camera trailer, and there's nothing hidden about that. That's a great big sign to the world that the Bloomington Police Department are watching this. But if we have some break-ins, now we can go back and see what plates came through.
I currently investigate damaged properties, theft from autos, and financial transaction card frauds. We collect evidence at the scene, possible fingerprints or DNA evidence.
I was a victim of a random drive-by assault. Through the latest technology and investigative work, the Bloomington Police Department were able to apprehend my attacker.
Identity theft is the #1 reported crime we have today that's reported to the Federal Trade Commission, and is probably one of the most prolific crimes that we deal with here in the city of Bloomington.
I've had the privilege of working with the Bloomington Police Department for the past 10 years. They've helped me provide a safe and wonderful community here in Bloomington for my residents.
The Bloomington Police Department has one of 4 bomb squads in the state of Minnesota. They have state-of-the-art equipment to protect our community.
Police search warrant! Search warrant!
SWAT is called in when standard patrol tactics and equipment are not sufficient to handle a dangerous situation.
The mall unit makes about 25% of the arrests for Bloomington to maintain a safe environment for shoppers and guests that come to the mall. And we're able to do that because we work hard at building the relationships we have, whether it be with loss prevention or tenants or mall security or the transit police.
We have 6 canines. 4 of them are assigned to the patrol division for apprehension and tracking, as well as narcotics detection. The 5th dog is assigned to the investigative division for the sole purposes of drug detection. The 6th dog is assigned to the Mall of America as our bomb sniffer. Our holding facility has 13 cells, and we book over 2,000 people per year. We provide a 10-week Citizens Academy. We cover topics such as use of force, DWI enforcement, and many others.
The Joint Community Police Partnership here in Bloomington helps to be able to connect our multicultural residents to our police department and to be able to form bonds of trust between those two. The biggest need that we have is making sure that our multicultural communities understand the police and that the police also understand our multicultural communities.
At the core of our department, you'll find a philosophy of forward thinking, one that calls on cutting-edge tactics and technology, along with close partnerships with our residents and businesses, always training and always looking for ways to improve what we do. That's the Bloomington way.
We've been hiring police officers for a long time under a certain path, as Chris just described, and it's actually served us fairly well. But as you know, and you've probably seen in the news and in mainstream media, law enforcement is under some challenges in the last couple of years, and you know, has forced us to continue to kind of look in the mirror and make sure we're doing things just as good as we can to make sure that our law enforcement agencies are reflective of the communities that we serve, to make sure that the experiences and the kinds of backgrounds that people have when they come to us can make us the best police department we can be. As I've said, I've hired about 50 police officers in the last 8 years that I've been the chief, and have seen people come into us with many different backgrounds. Under the traditional hiring program that we've done in Bloomington, we've hired people who are fresh out of skills, as you saw, the kind of pathway, but we've also seen people cross over from other police departments and come work for us. In fact, the 2 guys that are here today from the Bloomington Police Department were those kinds of officers. They started their careers in other police departments. In one case, I think it was West St. Paul, another one in Woodbury. They developed some good experience, and they decided they wanted to come work for us. And I really appreciate those people because they come to us with some experience. They come to us with a little bit of background in law enforcement from another agency, and in most cases they work out really well for us. And afterwards you can get a chance to talk to those guys about their experiences. But and so as we kind of contemplated a new program and looked at what the State Patrol had done, and actually Minneapolis has been doing this, and that is really kind of what this program is. It allows folks, you folks, this is the pool of candidates that we can draw from who might have experiences in other kinds of careers that have really, without even knowing it, prepared you well to come be a police officer, life experience, job experience, and we can take care of the training, right? It just it's just making sure that you know that this is what you want to do. Law enforcement isn't for everyone, but we know that there are people out there in our communities who have some really good experiences that will help us fill some of the holes that we have in our organization, will help us be more reflective of our community from a demographic standpoint, from a diversity standpoint, and when I say that, I mean in terms of experiences and a whole lot of things. So that's why we're willing to give this a try. We are also running traditional hiring program right now. If you hear that Bloomington's hiring police officers, we're doing actually 2 processes. The other one is the more traditional program. I think we closed yesterday with over 350 applications, so we have some talent there to pick from, and this will be the next process. We're going to I think the application period for this is open for a few more months, and hopefully by the time we're done with that, not only will we see a very big pool of very good candidates, but we'll also see some other cities who decide to join in this effort. And so as you sit here today, Bloomington and St. Louis Park will be options as far as departments, but there hopefully will be many more. And we think that this type of a program will help a lot of different cities, not just Bloomington and St. Paul. So if you, again, if you're sitting there contemplating this whole idea, don't limit your view that it would only be Bloomington or St. Louis Park, because there may well be several other cities who are going to take part in this process. And so when you submitted that application, if you choose to make it available to those other cities as they join in, that will be an option too. Are we going to go without the video?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work, sorry.
All right, so the video would have shown the Bloomington Police Department and several different things that we do. Because we're unable to play it here today, what I will say is if you go to the City of Bloomington webpage and click on the police department, the video is prominently displayed on our webpage. and it's a pretty good one, yeah. It was done really recently. So if you get a chance and you kind of want to see a little bit more about what the Bloomington Police Department's like, go to our website and you can certainly play the video there. So I think with that, I'm going to turn things over to Chief John Luce from the St. Louis Park Police Department.
So good morning. I'm John Luce. I'm the police chief here in St. Louis Park, as Chief Potts indicated. You might have noticed he's dressed a lot sharper than I am this morning. That's not unusual. Never has it been more stark than it is today. But I'm going over to see my alma mater, St. Thomas, play football at noon today, and I'm going to be having to cut out a little early for that. So forgive me for looking a little bit like a sports fan and less like a police chief. But what I first of all want to do is welcome you and say we do appreciate the fact that you have discovered us in this concept somehow and came this morning. What will happen when the presentations are done is you'll have a chance to talk to some of the members of both agencies, and I do want to, at least before I go, tell you that there's some staff here from St. Louis Park. Our HR manager, Ali Timponi, is over here. Lieutenant Mike Harsey is back there, along with Officer Pam Gronsky. And Anna Salazar, who is in the State Patrol's Lido Academy right now, is an employee of our police department. So she's actually in the position that we're recruiting people like you to take on in the future. We're just using the State Patrol's Academy as a host, because we haven't got this quite off the ground yet. So when you're done listening this morning and things break up, I just want to invite you to step back and talk to our staff, and if there's anything about our organization or our community that speaks to you, talk to Lieutenant Harsey about doing a ride-along with us. We don't have a great video to sell us to you on like Bloomington does, but I can tell you that if you spend a few hours in a car with one of our people, you'll find out some things about what goes on in our community and how things work here, and you might just decide this might be a good place for you. The idea of a non-traditional way to hire comes at a time in society, as I think Chief Potts alluded to, when there's a lot of somewhat indiscriminate shots being taken at our profession. Individual police officers or individual human beings make mistakes, and they're flawed, as all of us are. But organizations and cultures are much bigger than that. And if anybody says all of this organization or all of that type of person is flawed in a certain way, step back from that. And I invite you again, get in the car with one of our people and get to know them. They're amazing human beings. And it's difficult, if not impossible, to make a good cop out of an ethically or morally flawed person. But if you hire good people with good values, and they stand for good things as human beings, there's a pretty good chance, at least in this community, you can be successful as a police officer, because that's what we care the most about. Most of the time, we can teach you how to write reports and use handcuffs and tasers and ticket books and anything electronic. And the squad cars look like airplane cockpits today, if you haven't seen one, but mostly it matters that you want to serve people and you want to help and you want to do good. And that's what our cops say. Mission statements can be hard to memorize, but that's not too hard. So the idea of non-traditional, we want to reach your hearts and your heads both this morning. Good policing in our community involves some really natural tension between your heart and your brain, and you have to struggle. The ideas of doing things a certain way and everything's done by policy are over with. Problem solving, quality of life is about being innovative and even being entrepreneurial sometimes at the squad car level in how you fix problems and make quality of life better for every person that lives and works in our community. The spectrum of people that lives and works here is broad and diverse. We hope for and try to promise the best opportunity for quality of life and success to anybody and everybody that lives here. People live here by choice. They make a decision to come here. It's about our schools and our parks and our public places and certainly our safety. So you have the chance to think about whether or not you want to be a part of that. Non-traditional goes to the question that was raised earlier about what's going on in our profession and why people are somewhat gratuitously sometimes criticizing us in a broad brush way. But I also think that as demands and expectations get bigger and broader and wider, and our pool of candidates gets narrower and more shallow. So necessity can be the mother of invention. Maybe it is this time, I don't know. But we're learning how to recruit and hire differently, and you're part of that learning, and I'm so thankful that you're here to do that. So when you think about why you're sitting here today and what brought you here, you know, some of it I think came from your brain. I hope some of it came from your heart. When my kids were little, and they're grown now, but I used to teach them and talk to them about leadership and letting your heart take over once in a while, and how to lead and how to think about being an idealist in life. It's hard to be an idealist sometimes when everything sounds negative. I used to teach my kids about leadership, and we used to teach them quotes about leadership that they could hang on to. And my older daughter, Sarah, moved to South Dakota in July. She got married to a young man from South Dakota. He's in medical school in Rapid City, so she's living out there with him. And she's working for the president of the hospital out there in the marketing department. And she wrote an annual letter for him to sign, speaking to his employees. And she used a quote that I taught her from Vince Lombardi, which I'm really proud of her for. Most of you don't know who Vince Lombardi is because he was a coach back in the 60s and 70s, and most of you weren't born then. But he was a great football coach. And what he said was, perfection is not achievable. But if you chase perfection, you might catch excellence. And so our profession has to be about that. We have to win trust every day, every time, every contact. Most of our now we had a shooting last night in St. Louis Park. It's a very rare thing. Most of our contacts are our customer service. Most of them are quality of life. Most of them are the one chance we have to show our residents what exceptional people we are and what exceptional work we do. We get a chance on a very routine basis to serve an employee or a customer who's lived here 20 years and calls us about some minor routine thing. It's so important to be professional and be respectful and let them see and feel the extra mile you're going to go for that person that one time they called. So if you're thinking about what you want to do with the rest of your life, and going back to my daughters, and there's greatness that resides in all of us to make a difference in our societies and our communities. If you're here today because you're thinking about policing as that possibility to unleash that greatness in you, first of all, I'm really glad you're here. And second of all, I hope you'll stay afterwards and talk to my staff. And because I have to leave, I hope if you want to talk to me, you'll call me. I'll be glad to meet with any of you. but welcome, and thank you, and I'm truly glad you're here.
Thanks, Chief. So next we want to give you a little bit more information about what a career in law enforcement might look like. And this is kind of just the 60-second overview of things. So definitely talking to one of the officers in the room is going to give you much more information. But this is kind of the nuts and bolts. And what I'm going to talk about is generally specific to Minnesota and to the Twin Cities area of Minnesota. I have been working in city HR and hiring police officers for about 10 years now. And so I'm pretty comfortable that this is an accurate reflection of the job and the career here in our area. It may be different if you're from another state or if you go look in another state. First of all, you might be interested to know that the vast, vast majority of police officers working in Minnesota, and especially in the metropolitan area, are union employees. So in Bloomington, we have our patrol officers are a union. We've got about 95, I think, officers. And then we also have a union for our supervisors. So we collectively bargain over wages and benefits and working conditions on a regular basis, and that's pretty common. You might also want to take a look and give a little thought to the work schedule of a police officer. This is not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job, although there are assignments that are that. And at some point in if you have a career as a law enforcement officer, you may end up in one of those assignments. But everybody does some time in their career working nights, working weekends, working holidays. So that is a reality of the job. Each department sets up their schedules differently, but you will find longer schedules and shorter work weeks to be fairly common. So 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, 4 days of work followed by 4 days off on a consistent basis. So there are definitely pluses and advantages to the work schedule as well. You can see some of the shift schedules for the City of St. Louis Park on one of the displays over on the wall. You may want to check that out again or ask one of the officers in the room what their work schedule looks like. Promotional opportunities. A career in law enforcement is just that. It's a career instead of just a job. There are opportunities to move up within our organizations. It certainly depends on the specific organization and the size of the organization that you might end up with. But in Bloomington, most of our officers come in at police officer level. Some come in even earlier in what we call a community service officer. But we promote to sergeant, and then in Bloomington we call it commander. Other departments call it lieutenant. And then we have deputy chief and chief. And almost all of those promotions are internal promotions. We build and develop from within, and we are in it for the long haul with our employees. We invest in our employees, and we look to promote from within. And then whether you're moving, literally up the chain of command, or you can also move outward. We have a lot of specialized training and assignments in Bloomington and in St. Louis Park too. We're large enough to be fortunate to have a mix of these. If you end up in a smaller department, you can be a little bit more of a jack of all trades. They don't necessarily have as many specialties. In Bloomington, we have assignments as detectives, school resource officers working in our elementary, middle, and high schools. We have a SWAT team. We have a bomb squad in Bloomington. That's fairly unusual. I think there are 4 in the state of Minnesota, so not something you'll see everywhere. We also have canine officers in the city of Bloomington. We have the opportunity to become certified trainers, so we use a lot of our own officers to train our workforce on a regular basis. And you will receive a lot of training. We talk about this program having kind of a 16-week training component. But you will not be done training if that is the case. There is annual and ongoing training that goes into this career in any department that you might end up in. And then there's wages and benefits, and we wanted to give you a general idea of what this might look like. These are average numbers for the Twin Cities metropolitan area. So this metro average starting pay is about $53,000 a year as a first-year police officer. And that is before overtime. And overtime is a common, element of working as a police officer. The baseline or the starting pay is going to be fairly similar, although not identical, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The top end of the pay range is going to vary a little bit more depending upon the department, the size of the department. Top pay goes anywhere from $75,000 to $87,000 a year for a police officer with, say, somewhere between 5 and 10 years of experience. And again, there's always overtime on that. Insurance benefits. Any police officer working full-time in a metro area city is getting medical, dental, life, and long-term disability insurance from their employer. In many cases, you'll still find that individual insurance coverage for the officer is covered largely or fully by the city, and then you do pay a little bit if you're having family coverage on your plan. Paid time off, again, I'm confident standing up here, even though I know the details of my city. All of our full-time officers across the metro area have jobs that provide paid vacation and sick leave, or sometimes they call it PTO, and they're combined. Paid holidays. You do work some holidays, but you get paid well for doing so, and you get alternative days off in comparison. And then pension benefits. In Minnesota, just like we all license through the same state agency, we all provide a statewide pension for police officers. So whether you end up working for Bloomington or St. Louis Park or Hennepin County or Burnsville, Brooklyn Park, they all have the exact same pension, and it's laid out by the state of Minnesota. And the full retirement from a police pension is at age 55. So that's largely a thing of the past in many other industries, but something that we're still able to offer people who serve in this capacity in Minnesota. Allie's going to talk more about kind of the hiring process. If this all sounds great to you, where do you go from here? How do you sign up? Does anybody have any questions about anything they've heard thus far, though? All righty, it's all yours.
Thanks. Again, my name's Allie Timponi. I'm the HR coordinator here in St. Louis Park. Really appreciate everybody coming out. I think most of your questions are going to be about the hiring process and how it works. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. This is the first time we've done this, so we're learning along with you. And we have a goal for how we want the process to work, but nothing has really been solidified at this point. So I'll tell you what our plan is, and we're going to take you along a ride with us on this journey. So the first step to be considered as a police trainee is to apply. And the application is on our website, stlouispark.org. You apply there and you are considered for the program for Bloomington, St. Louis Park, and any other city or organization that decides to join us in this hiring effort. We are working with Hennepin Technical College to fill a classroom. We're hoping for about 12 students in the class. We can get more, but we need more cities to join us to actually fill that classroom up. So depending on, I think Bloomington's committed 2 or 3 people, St. Louis Park can fit 2 or 3 people in the class, and then we'll hopefully get other cities to join us. So I don't know how many vacancies there are at this time. That's still evolving. But the best thing you can do is apply on the St. Louis Park website, and you'll be considered by all cities. I assume most of you have done that, and that's how you found out about today's meeting. But if you haven't, go do that right away, because then you'll get emailed all of the information that we want people to know going through the process. So plans for upcoming interviews and all of that. We're also going to send out a link to today's meeting so that people who have applied but weren't able to attend can hear all of the same information that you're getting. So the application is set to close not until March 1st. So I've had a lot of questions. Is that a typo? No. We're deliberately having a long application period in order to explain the program and convince more people to apply. So that's deliberately open until March 1st. Our goal is to do a joint round of first interviews. So we'll do first interviews for everybody who meets the eligibility requirements of the program, which is set by the Post Board and Hennepin Tech. So there's a lot of questions I've been getting about, do I qualify? We've been working with Hennepin Tech to determine that. If you do qualify and meet the minimum requirements, you'll be invited to an interview. We're going to set up several interview dates. The time, the date, and the location for those have not yet been determined, but I expect there'll be several in January, several in February, and probably in the first week of March as well. You'll get an email notifying you of those dates, and then you can select the date to sign up for that first interview. And again, it'll be joint. All the cities that are participating in the program will participate in that first round interview. Our plan after first round is to basically let each jurisdiction conduct the rest of the hiring process on their own. So if you did well in your first round interview, you may be in consideration from many different cities for employment. So you may be asked by Bloomington to come back for a second interview. You may be asked by St. Louis Park to come back for a second interview. At this point, it's up to you to determine where you want to work. So we're sort of competing for the best candidates, but we're running joint in the first round interview, and then we're kind of splitting up and doing our own second round interviews and recruiting after that. Does that make sense? Okay, so you may be pursued by several agencies. Again, those second round interview dates have not been determined. It will be sometime after the first interview, obviously. Then we have to do background investigations on all of our candidates, and that takes several weeks. So we're going to try to do that as quickly as possible, because from the date that the application closes, March 1st, to mid-May, when the training program starts, we need to have our background investigations completed, and then send all of our candidates who receive conditional offers through the pre-employment medical appointment with our doctors and a pre-employment psychological examination. So those are the steps. Then the training program begins. We don't have a date yet, but it'll probably be around mid-May 2017. It's a 16 to 19 week program. At the completion of that program, you'll take the post-exam. When you pass the post-exam, you'll transition to a probationary police officer for that city. So you may receive several conditional offers. It's up to you to decide who you'd like to work for. So a lot of people have asked, how do I know what city I'm going to work for? That's up to you. So if you perform well in the recruitment process and several cities give you conditional offers, congratulations, and it's up to you to then decide which offer to accept. So that's kind of our plan for the overall process. Again, the training program would start sometime in May. That would conclude sometime in September. So we're expecting that our new police officers would be sworn in September or October of 2017. So about a year from now. Are there any questions about the process? Okay. Yes? Okay, so the question was, we're only looking for 12 candidates. Well, at this time, our goal is 12. We can fill more than that, but we need more cities that are committed to hiring people. So we're working on that. Yes, good question. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I think at this point, there's going to be a lot of questions about the training program itself. So Mike, are you ready to come and talk? This is Mike McGee from Minnesota State Colleges, and he's going to talk about the training program at Hennepin Tech.
Ellie, you got the new name right. That's great.
Yeah. You got to talk into the...
Formerly known as Minsky.
You have to talk into the mic because
I
we're
do.
taping it. Yep.
Oh, we're recording it. All right. So again, I'm Mike McGee. I'm with Minnesota State. We're the public higher ed system of 30 colleges and 7 state universities. And one of those colleges is Hennepin Technical College. So I work with Hennepin Tech, and they're delivering the training for most of the metropolitan training that goes on for future law enforcement officers. The program is well. First of all, let me just ask, because I'm very curious. The group the other night was pretty excited. Is anybody excited to be here about this future career? Yeah, that show of hands is pretty affirming for us when we're talking about this training. And some of the most exciting aspects of it, in fact, will be the training. It is comprehensive. You're coming into a program that is different, as Chris mentioned, than the traditional program where it's the law enforcement skills. There is some theory lecture coursework that is involved, and that adds about 5 or 6 weeks to the program. So we are looking at about a 15 or 16 week process. The first 4 to 6 weeks academic coursework. The next couple of weeks includes comprehensive firearms training, emergency vehicle operations and pursuit training, first responder training. Then for another 3 weeks, defensive tactics, although that's woven through. There's some DT and physical conditioning that is woven through the entire program of training. so that you stay up on your physical conditioning, because obviously you understand that there are some physical aspects to this, and it's not like you're fighting. Often what the physical aspects are involve lifting. You might be working with an ambulance crew or in an emergency situation where you're lifting a person up or you're lifting a gurney. Traffic and DUI training, so that's pretty comprehensive as well, and that's a very dynamic series of the training where you're out in a squad car, you're making traffic stops, and you're having a lot of interaction with drivers and with individuals in that capacity. Crime scene evidence and crime scene training, response to in-progress crimes and scenario training go on for about 3 or 4 additional weeks. Force-on-force training, which is the real dynamic sort of defensive tactics training where you're using force in a situation which admittedly is rare in law enforcement. We ask you to be more skilled with your mouth than with your muscles in law enforcement. That's really necessary. And then active shooter training, where you're in critical decision-making training in dynamic situations, and shoot, don't shoot. You've probably seen some of this on television. You've heard about it, where actual near live rounds are used. Simunition, it's called, where you're placed in a very high-stress situation and asked to react accordingly. And then there's a couple-week break before you take the post-exam. And from that point on, once you're successful there, you, of course, transition to the sworn law enforcement capacity with the agency that you have been working with. Are there any questions about that? Yes?
Sorry, I'm asking other questions. When you said first responder, do we actually get our first responder certificate?
You do.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, there's first responder training involved, and does it culminate with a certificate or a certification? Yeah, there is for first responder. That's a requirement. That's actually a post requirement for the training. Some of you may have that already. If you do, there may be an opportunity to not be directly involved in that portion of the training, though. Because you're going through as a cohort, and I had this question after the session in Bloomington the other night. Someone had a couple of courses under their belt already. We really want to keep the cohort together, so it's not like we're going to, send you to the library to study while the rest of your colleagues go through the training. It'll be a refresher for you, and you'll probably be engaged in it whether you've had it once already or not. Yes?
So for the post-exam, can you tell us what's on it? What does it consist of? Is it just knowledge-based, or is it different physical or training?
Sure. There's no physical aspect to it. Oh, yeah, sorry. He asked about the post-exam and what to expect on that exam. It's a what we call a paper and pencil sit-down test. So there's no aspect of dynamic demonstration of skills. That's done in your test-out procedures during the course of the 15 weeks of training. That, in a sense, is part of the post-exam because you have to meet those outcomes. You have to succeed in firearms. You have to succeed in your response and dealings with scenario situations, that sort of thing. But the post-exam itself is question and answer, and it covers all the aspects of the post-learning objectives, which are way too numerous for me to go into this morning. I wouldn't remember them all anyway. But I would encourage you, if you're curious, indeed you are because you asked, go to the post board site, and there'll be some information there about what the learning objectives are. But they are comprehensive, and they cover all the traffic statutes, constitutional law, state statutes that relate to misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and felony crimes, and a lot of other rules and regs that would impact you in terms of how you would carry out your duties as a law enforcement officer in Minnesota. Yes?
During the training, do you cover any of the posts, like study for the post test or anything like that?
Well, sure. I think, you know, faculty, I'll learn maybe by the last question. So the question was, during the training, are the post objectives referred to are covered in the classroom setting or the training setting? Yes, they are. I mean, there's reference to those. You're also going to get a thick manual that will guide you through the learning objectives that are part of the text, books, equipment, and materials that you will receive as a student in the program. And the faculty in the program, and I'll mention, I'm a former faculty in the program and a former dean for the program, and actually a former law enforcement officer myself. The faculty are very knowledgeable because they've been dealing with this. Most of them have years and years and years of experience, and so you'll find it's a rich learning environment. Plus you learn from each other, and the hope in this program is that you'll come on with a group, colleagues and fellow students, trainees that you'll be engaged with, and you'll create your own sort of learning community where you'll coach each other, right? And if somebody doesn't remember something that was said in a lecture, and you ask your fellow student, they will, and that's how the learning community gets created. That's why we like a group that goes through together, and you support one another. And we have a very high success rate with our skills training. We probably in the high 90s in terms of who finishes or who completes the training. And then the post-board exam success is also very high, probably 96 or 97% on the first attempt. So we're really proud of that. And obviously you need to be committed to a lot of study. This will be a full-time, 40-hour-a-week plus responsibility for you. And as someone who wants to succeed in it, you're going to need to be committed to study well beyond those 40 hours to make sure that you stay up to the level of skills and demonstration of abilities that you need to be successful. Any other questions that I can repeat? Okay, I'll be at the back of the room if anyone thinks of something as the session ends. Really appreciate you all being here. This is a very exciting time for us. So thanks again.
Yes. That concludes our information session. I highly encourage you to stay after and talk to one of our officers that are here from Bloomington or St. Louis Park. Learn about the program. I want to point out that two officers from St. Louis Park, Officer Pam Gronsky has been through a similar program, and Police Trainee Anna Salazar is currently in this same program. So if you want to really get some details about what it's like, they're the ones to talk to. So please ask us questions, and thank you for coming. Have a great day.